The aftermath of the battle. The Perseus and Perseverance manage to escape after the EMP pulse, but both ships are heavily damaged. The story opens with the two captains discussing the next steps. Captain Ryland Pierce and Captain Lyra Maddox both reflect on the risky choices they've made going against protocol to save each other and the potential consequences for their actions. Tension rises. The Perseus is running low on critical resources, with key systems failing. Ryland has to make the difficult decision to seek repairs on a nearby neutral planet, Draxus 3. Draxus 3 is a hub of mercenaries, pirates, and illegal trade, where Sidhari spies could be lurking. It's a dangerous but necessary stop. A new threat emerges. As they attempt to make contact with a rogue engineer on Draxus 3, Ryland's crew is betrayed, leading to a Sidhari ambush. Lyra and Ryland must work together to escape, navigating the criminal underworld while trying to protect their already damaged ships. Climax. The betrayal sets up a final showdown between the humans and the Sidhari forces. Both captains must decide how far they're willing to go, and how many rules they're willing to break, to survive. A tense battle ensues, testing the limits of human ingenuity and endurance. Resolution. The humans narrowly escape once more, but the damage is done. Ryland and Lyra realize that the war is changing, and so must they. The book may no longer be enough to guide them through the storm ahead. Story continuation. By the book, A Humanity's Altered Universe Tale, HFY Story Part 2. The Perseus drifted in the silence of space, her engines humming with a low, uneven vibration. Captain Ryland Pierce sat in the dim light of his quarters, staring at the datapad in front of him. The damage reports were staggering. Half of the ship's systems were running on emergency power. The shields were at 30%, and their weapon stores were nearly depleted. But they had survived. Lyra, he muttered, tapping the comms button on his desk. A moment later, Captain Lyra Maddox's voice crackled through the speaker. Ryland, you reading the damage reports too? Yeah, Ryland replied, his eyes scanning the endless list of systems that were barely holding together. We're hanging by a thread. Lyra, one more hit and neither of us will make it. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I've been thinking about that. We can't stay out here drifting. The Sidhari will track us eventually. We need repairs, supplies, fuel, everything. Ryland exhaled slowly. I was afraid you'd say that. There's only one place nearby that could offer us what we need. Draxus 3, Lyra said quietly, the name heavy with implication. Ryland nodded. Even though she couldn't see him, Draxus 3 was a notorious hive of criminals, mercenaries, and smugglers. A neutral zone where neither human nor Sidhari forces held sway. But neutral didn't mean safe. The planet was a magnet for scum of all kinds, and Sidhari spies often lurked there, waiting for a chance to sabotage human operations. Still, they had no choice. We'll have to risk it, Ryland said finally. There's an engineer there, Jorin Dax, who's worked with the fleet before. If we can track him down, he might be able to patch up both ships. And if we're walking into a trap? Lyra asked, her voice tinged with skepticism. Ryland leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. Then we'll just have to handle it. We don't have the luxury of playing it by the book anymore. The line went silent again before Lyra responded, her voice low. You're right, we'll have to adapt. Meet you at the rendezvous point. The two ships limped toward Draxus 3, their engines sputtering as they entered the planet's chaotic atmosphere. Below them, the cityscape stretched in all directions, a sprawling maze of neon lights and crumbling buildings. Draxus 3 was a planet of contradictions, beautiful in its decay, vibrant in its lawlessness. Ryland stood on the bridge, watching the descent on the viewscreen. Oron, patch me through to Dax. We need him ready when we land. Aye, Captain, Oren replied, tapping into the local comms network. Hailing him now. The signal buzzed, and after a few moments, a gruff voice answered. Jorin Dax here. I hope you brought credits, Captain Pierce, because I don't work for free. Ryland smirked. You'll get paid, Dax. I just need my ship in one piece, and quickly. Dax's laugh echoed through the comms. Always in a rush. Ha, fine. Meet me at the docks. I'll get you patched up, for a price. The comms cut off, and Ryland turned to Nova, his second in command. Keep the ship on high alert. We're not alone out here, and the Sidhari have eyes everywhere. Nova nodded, her expression tense. Understood, Captain. The landing bay was a mess of activity, with ships of all sizes and shapes crammed together in the bustling port. As Ryland and his crew descended the ramp of the Perseus, their hands instinctively rested on their weapons. Drax's 3 wasn't a place to walk unarmed. Lyra's crew was already there, standing in a loose formation around their battered ship, the Perseverance. She spotted Ryland immediately and crossed the bay to meet him, her sharp eyes scanning their surroundings. "This place hasn't changed much," she said, glancing around at the shifty figures that loitered nearby, "still a cesspool of lowlifes." Ryland grinned. "It's homey in its own way. Let's just get this done," she muttered, pulling her cloak tighter around her shoulders as they moved toward the meeting point. Jarin Dax was waiting for them, leaning against a rusty old ship with his arms crossed. He was a tall man with a patchy beard, his clothes stained with oil and grease. He grinned when he saw Ryland. "Captain Pierce, as I live and breathe," Dax said, pushing off the wall. "It's been a while. I heard you were out there dodging the Sidhari." Ryland shook his hand. "Not dodging, surviving." Dax chuckled. "Same difference. Now, let's see what we've got." He turned toward the ships, his eyes narrowing as he took in the damage. "Damn, you weren't kidding. These girls are in rough shape." Ryland's stomach churned at the thought of how close they had come to losing both ships in the last battle. "Can you fix them?" Dax scratched his chin. "Yeah, I can patch them up. Won't be pretty, but it'll get you flying again. Of course, I'm going to need a little something extra for the rush job." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. "We're already paying you, Dax." He shrugged, flashing her a grin. "Hey, rush work comes with a price, Captain Maddox, you know how it is." Before she could respond, a shout rang out from behind them. Ryland spun around, his hand instinctively going to his sidearm. A group of armed mercenaries strode toward them, their weapons drawn. At their head was a Sidhari, tall and armored. His pale skin stretched tight over his angular face, his glowing eyes locked onto Ryland's crew with cold malice. Well, the Sidhari said, his voice smooth and mocking. "It looks like we've stumbled upon the infamous Perseus and Perseverance. What a coincidence." Ryland's heart pounded in his chest. He had known this might happen, but the reality of facing a Sidhari commander up close was enough to make his blood run cold. Lyra's hand twitched toward her blaster. "What do you want?" The Sidhari smiled, showing sharp teeth. "Your surrender, of course, and your ships, but if you'd prefer to fight, I won't mind. It's been a while since I've had the pleasure of breaking humans." Ryland's mind raced. They were outnumbered, and their ships were barely holding together, but surrender wasn't an option. Not now, not ever. "We don't break," Ryland said, stepping forward, his voice steady. "Not to the likes of you." The Sidhari's smile widened. "Very well." Without warning, the mercenaries opened fire, the bay erupting into chaos. Ryland and Lyra dove behind a stack of crates, their weapons drawn as they returned fire. "Dax, get out of here," Ryland shouted over the gunfire. "Get the ships ready to move." Dax didn't need to be told twice. He bolted toward the Perseus, yelling orders to his crew as he scrambled to start repairs. Ryland popped up from cover, firing a few well-placed shots that took down one of the mercenaries. Lyra was beside him, her movements swift and precise as she laid down suppressive fire. "We need to get to the ships," Lyra shouted, ducking as a blast whizzed past her head. Ryland nodded, his mind racing. They had to retreat before the Sidhari reinforcements arrived, but the dock was swarming with enemies. They wouldn't make it through without a distraction. "Nova, do you copy?" Ryland barked into his comms. "Copy, Captain," Nova's voice came through, tense but clear. "Activate the secondary charges we planted on the eastern side of the bay. Blow the fuel depots." "Understood." A few seconds later, a massive explosion rocked the bay, sending debris flying through the air. The Sidhari mercenaries were thrown off balance, some of them diving for cover as the flames spread through the eastern side of the docks. "Now," Ryland shouted, grabbing Lyra's arm as they sprinted toward the Perseus. They reached the ship just as Dax's crew finished their hasty repairs. The engines roared to life, and the ramp slammed shut behind them. "We're good to go," Dax yelled from the engine room. "Get us out of here," Ryland ordered, collapsing into his chair on the bridge. The Perseus lifted off, the Perseverance following close behind as they shot into the sky. Below them, the flames continued to rage, but the Sidhari weren't far behind. Their ships appeared on the tactical display, closing in fast. "Punch it," Ryland barked. The stars stretched into streaks of light as the two ships jumped into FTL. leaving Draxus III and the Sidhari far behind.